Chosen one. You did not arrive here by accident, and this moment is not random. By divine appointment and perfect spiritual timing, you were led to hear this now. Heaven has been watching your steps, weighing your endurance, and preparing a supernatural transfer with your name on it. What looked like delay was alignment. What felt like pressure was preparation. You are standing at the edge of a divine wealth release, a financial breakthrough orchestrated beyond human systems. As it is written, the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. Anointed one, the patterns they tried to study could never contain what God sealed in you. Prepare your spirit. Something is shifting. Chosen one, there is a reason your name keeps echoing in rooms you no longer enter. There is a reason your silence feels louder than their noise. What you are witnessing right now is not coincidence, and it is not paranoia. It is exposure. Heaven has shifted something around you, and the people who once felt comfortable misjudging you can feel it. They don't know what changed, but they know they no longer have access. They replay your words. They revisit old conversations. They scroll, screenshot, analyze, and speculate. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped explaining yourself. And when a chosen one stops explaining, confusion enters the room. You didn't grow distant out of bitterness. You grew quiet out of wisdom. Silence became your altar. Stillness became your strategy. I've lived this. There was a season where I said less, not because I had nothing to say, but because every word I spoke was being weaponized. I learned that not every battle needs a voice, and not every calling needs an audience. The moment I stopped defending myself, something strange happened. The pressure lifted, and the ones who were used to controlling the narrative began to lose sleep. That is when I realized silence isn't absence, it's authority. Chosen one, you are not being watched because you are weak. You are being watched because something on you cannot be predicted. When God marks a life for transfer, confusion always surrounds the observers. The air changes. The atmosphere tightens. What once felt casual now feels tense. People sense that something is being rearranged and they don't know where they fit anymore. You've been underestimated before, not once, not twice. This has followed you since you were young. People sensed depth in you they couldn't name. They called it strange. They called it quiet. They mistook restraint for fear. But what they were sensing was weight, calling, capacity. You were carrying something you didn't yet have permission to release. There is a moment in every chosen one's life when the world realizes it misread the assignment. That moment doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with clarity. It arrives when you stop chasing validation and start walking in alignment. And suddenly, the ones who ignored you begin studying you, not to understand you, but to catch up. Here is the truth they will never admit. You didn't become unpredictable. You became independent. The moment you stopped needing their approval, heaven stepped in. The moment you chose obedience over attachment, doors began moving without announcements. This is how divine transfer works. Quietly, strategically, without permission. I remember the first time provision came without me asking. No begging, no explaining, just alignment. I had let go of something familiar, something comfortable, and I didn't even know what I was stepping into. But God did. And what came next didn't look like luck. It looked like precision, like timing no human could manipulate. That's when I learned surrender activates supply. Chosen one. What you're stepping into now isn't just emotional clarity, it's financial realignment. It's supernatural favor in places that once resisted you. It's the kind of provision Scripture hints at when it says that what was stored is released at the appointed time, not because you forced it, but because you were faithful when no one was watching. They study your patterns because they can't find leverage anymore. Your calm unnerves them. Your absence unsettles them. You no longer react on cue, and when control disappears, fear takes its place. That fear is not your problem. It's confirmation. You're not hiding. You're not retreating. You're being repositioned. Heaven is intervening, quietly moving pieces behind the scenes while you focus on staying clean in spirit and clear in purpose. What looks like distance is actually protection. What feels like isolation is preparation. So if you've felt a strange calm lately, if you've sensed something shifting but can't fully explain it, this is your confirmation. You are standing at the edge of transfer. Not because you are better than others, but because you were willing to let go when God asked you to. Stay here. Don't rush this moment. Chosen one. There is something you must understand before we go any further. They are not confused because you are complicated. They are confused because you're no longer accessible. And access is the currency they lived on. When heaven cut the supply, panic replaced confidence. They are trying to study your patterns, but what they don't realize is this: the moment God steps into your life as architect, patterns dissolve. What they are looking for no longer exists. They're analyzing an old version of you while heaven is already moving the next one into position. I've watched this happen in my own life. People who once spoke with certainty about who I was suddenly began asking questions they never needed answers to before. Why the distance? Why the calm? Why the sudden change in direction? They assumed something was wrong. What they didn't see was that something had finally aligned. Chosen one. The reason they can't crack the code is because the code is obedience, and obedience doesn't leave fingerprints. When God tells you to move quietly, when He asks you to let go without explaining, when He instructs you to stop reacting and start listening, you step into a frequency that can't be traced. This is where divine transfer begins, not when money appears, not when recognition shows up, but when your spirit stops negotiating with people who were never assigned to understand you. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment heaven starts explaining things for you. You didn't change overnight. You were processed, pressed, refined. Every season where you were misunderstood, every moment where you carried more than you spoke, every time you chose restraint over reaction, it was shaping something. You thought you were surviving. Heaven was training you. They're studying your silence because they don't know what to do with it. Silence removes leverage. Silence breaks manipulation. Silence exposes motive. When you stop reacting, people are forced to face themselves. And most people would rather study you than confront what your stillness reveals about them. Chosen one. You are not chaotic. You are strategic, even when you didn't know it. Especially when you didn't know it. God was teaching you timing, teaching you pace, teaching you when to move and when to wait. And now when doors are opening that don't make sense to outsiders, they assume there must be a trick. There isn't. There's alignment. I remember a season when things started coming together in ways I couldn't explain. Opportunities, provision, favor. Not because I chased them, but because I stopped chasing everything else. I had lost something that mattered to me, and in that loss, I gained clarity. I gained peace, and peace attracts provision faster than panic ever could. This is the part people don't talk about. Divine wealth transfer doesn't begin with increase, it begins with release. God removes attachments that would corrupt the blessing. He closes doors that would drain the supply. He isolates you long enough to detox your desires so that when the blessing comes, it doesn't destroy you. They're trying to predict your next move, but they don't realize you no longer move from impulse. You move from instruction. You don't need to signal lane changes when heaven is driving. That's why their predictions keep failing. They're using logic where obedience is operating. Chosen one, your unpredictability is not rebellion. It's discernment. You learned how to listen to atmosphere. You learned how to sense when something is off. You learned how to pull back before damage is done. That didn't come from books. That came from pain, from betrayal, from nights where you had to talk yourself through survival. And now the very instincts that were forged in hardship are guiding you into abundance. They think you disappeared. You didn't. You went inward. You recalibrated. You allowed God to strip off versions of you that were built for survival, not inheritance. And that's why they can't recognize you anymore. They're looking for the old armor, but you're wearing authority now. Chosen one, hear this clearly. The code they're trying to crack was never external. It was never behavior. It was never personality. The code was faith. And faith doesn't perform on command. Faith moves when heaven speaks. That's why things are shifting in your favor behind the scenes. That's why resources are lining up quietly. That's why connections are forming without effort. You're not forcing doors open anymore. You're walking through doors that were already prepared. Stay grounded here. Don't rush the process. In the next part, we're going to talk about why their obsession grows as your peace increases, and how that very obsession becomes proof that the transfer is already in motion. Chosen one, there is a reason your peace unsettles people more than your success ever did. Success can be explained away. Peace cannot. When someone sees you calm in seasons that once broke you, something in them begins to unravel. Not because you did anything to them, but because your stillness exposes what they've been avoiding in themselves. They are not watching you because they admire you. They are watching because they feel the shift. Something in the spiritual atmosphere around you has changed, and they can't place it. Your energy doesn't chase anymore. Your presence doesn't ask permission. You no longer announce your moves, and that silence feels threatening to people who relied on access to feel powerful. I've seen this pattern repeat in my own life. The more settled I became internally, the louder the external noise grew. People asked questions I didn't owe answers to. They searched for explanations that didn't belong to them. And I realized something important. When God stabilizes you, unstable people feel exposed. Chosen. One obsession doesn't come from love. It comes from loss of control. When someone can no longer predict you, manipulate you, or provoke you into familiar reactions, they begin to spiral. They replay your past. They analyze your pauses. They study your distance as if it hides a secret formula. But the truth is simpler than that. You stopped feeding what was never meant to grow. Your calm is not accidental. It was built, brick by brick. Through nights where you held yourself together while no one noticed. Through moments where you wanted to react but chose restraint. Through losses that forced you to redefine who you were without applause. That kind of calm carries authority. And authority makes insecure people nervous. This is where the transfer becomes visible, even if it hasn't fully manifested yet. Because before provision shows up in your hands, peace shows up in your spirit. Before doors open outwardly, God stabilizes you inwardly. And that inner stability becomes the signal that heaven trusts you with more. You may have noticed something recently. You don't chase closure the way you used to. You don't need to be understood by everyone anymore. You're not interested in winning arguments. That's not apathy. That's maturity. That's discernment. That's what happens when God begins to move you from survival mode into stewardship. They feel that shift, even if they can't articulate it. They sense that you're no longer available for old cycles, old games, old dynamics. And because they can't access the version of you they were comfortable with, they start creating stories to explain your growth. Labels, theories, diagnoses, anything to avoid the truth. The truth is this: you outgrew their reach. Chosen one. Heaven often removes you quietly because loud exits create unnecessary warfare. When God wants to protect a blessing, He moves you without announcement. When He prepares a financial or spiritual promotion, He does it while people are still looking at your past. That's why they're confused. They're studying who you were, not who you're becoming. I remember the moment I realized this for myself. I stopped feeling the urge to prove anything. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head, and almost immediately opportunities started appearing that didn't require persuasion. Provision came without negotiation. Favor showed up without performance. That's when I understood. When you stop striving, heaven starts supplying. Your peace is evidence that something has already shifted. Not will shift, has shifted. You are standing in a season where God is rearranging priorities, connections, and resources around you. Some of what's coming will look like money. Some will look like access. Some will look like protection you didn't even know you needed. All of it is intentional. They may call your distance cold. It's not. It's holy. It's the boundary that keeps what's sacred from being consumed by what's familiar. You didn't withdraw because you hate people. You withdrew because you finally learned how to love yourself enough to obey God. Chosen one. The reason their obsession grows while your peace deepens is because you're no longer reacting to fear. You're responding to instruction, and instruction carries authority that panic can't touch. You don't need to announce what you're doing next. You don't need to explain why you move differently. Heaven sees it. That's enough. So stay grounded, stay aligned, stay surrendered. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not invisible. You are being prepared for a level of stewardship that requires maturity, restraint, and trust. What's coming will not need defending. It will speak for itself. Chosen one. There is a weight that comes with becoming unreadable, and not everyone is prepared for it. When you stop leaking energy, when you stop explaining your motives, when you stop reacting on demand, you enter a level of clarity that reshapes your entire reality. This is not isolation. This is consecration. This is the stage where heaven begins trusting you with heavier assignments. What you are experiencing now is not random distancing. It is discernment activating. You see things faster. You feel shifts sooner. You sense intentions before words are spoken. And because of that, you move differently. You pause where you once rushed. You withdraw where you once overgave. That isn't fear. That is wisdom earned through survival. I remember the season when I first noticed this change in myself. Conversations felt louder than they used to. Certain rooms felt draining instead of familiar. I couldn't stay where I once tolerated discomfort. At first, I questioned myself. Then I realized something had sharpened. My spirit had learned to recognize what didn't belong. And when that happens, you don't argue. You adjust. Chosen one. The reason some people can no longer reach you is because they never had access to your future, only your past. When God begins preparing you for supernatural increase, He closes doors that would contaminate the blessing. This is not punishment. It is protection. Financial transfer requires spiritual order. Abundance without boundaries becomes destruction. You are learning how to steward silence, silence that protects momentum, silence that preserves clarity, silence that keeps unnecessary opinions from interfering with divine timing. People assume silence means confusion. In reality, it means you are listening to something higher. This is where many people misunderstand the process. They think elevation looks loud, public, celebrated. But most divine promotions happen quietly, behind closed doors, in private decisions, in moments where no one is clapping but heaven is recording. That's where you are now, chosen one. You didn't become guarded because you were hurt. You became guarded because you healed. And healing brings boundaries. Boundaries bring peace. Peace brings authority. Authority attracts provision. This is the order of things, even if the world never explains it that way. You may have noticed that certain temptations no longer appeal to you. Certain arguments don't hook you. Certain relationships don't pull at you the way they once did. That's not boredom. That's growth. You're no longer interested in environments that require you to shrink your spirit to belong. And yes, this makes some people uncomfortable, because when you refuse to play familiar roles, systems break, expectations collapse, control dissolves. They don't know where to place you anymore, and that uncertainty makes them restless. But that restlessness is not your responsibility. Chosen one, there is a financial dimension to this shift that many overlook. God does not release resources into chaos. He releases them into order. And the order He is establishing in you right now is preparing you to handle increase without losing yourself. You are being trained to receive without attachment, to manage without fear, to steward without ego. I've watched people receive money before they received maturity, and it cost them everything. I've watched people gain access before they gained wisdom, and it destroyed their peace. Heaven is not careless. What's coming to you is measured, intentional, timed. You may not see the full picture yet, but you can feel the alignment. Decisions feel cleaner. Discernment feels sharper. Your inner world feels steadier. That steadiness is not accidental. It's the foundation for what's about to be built. Chosen one. This is also why your circle is smaller. Not because you became superior, but because clarity filters access. You no longer entertain what drains you. You no longer negotiate your values. You no longer explain your boundaries. And that creates space. Space for God to move. Space for provision to land. Space for the right connections to find you without force. You are not being delayed. You are being refined. You are not being hidden. You are being protected. You are not losing anything that was meant to grow with you. What's leaving was never built to handle where you're going. Stay anchored here. Stay obedient in the quiet. Stay honest with yourself and with God. The silence you're walking in now is not empty. It's loaded. And when the next door opens, you'll understand why it had to be this way. Chosen one. There comes a point where obedience stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling ordinary. That's when you know something real is happening. You're no longer chasing signs. You're no longer asking for confirmation at every turn. You're moving with a quiet certainty that doesn't need applause. And that quiet certainty is what qualifies you for what's next. This season is teaching you how to receive without reaching, how to allow without grasping, how to stand still while heaven rearranges outcomes around you. That is not passivity. That is trust, matured through experience. You've already seen what happens when you force doors. You've lived through the exhaustion of trying to make things happen before their time. This time is different. You can feel it. I remember a moment when I finally stopped trying to predict how things would work out. I had done everything I knew how to do. I'd shown up. I'd been faithful. And there was nothing left to prove. That was the moment peace settled in. And shortly after, provision followed in ways I couldn't have engineered. Not because I deserved it more, but because I was finally aligned enough to receive it without fear. Chosen. One divine transfer often arrives disguised as simplicity. It doesn't always look like a sudden windfall at first. Sometimes it looks like debt easing without explanation. Sometimes it looks like an opportunity that feels light instead of heavy. Sometimes it looks like a conversation that opens a door you weren't even knocking on. But every piece carries the same signature: effortless alignment. You're learning that not everything valuable requires struggle. Some things come because the season changed, because the soil is ready, because the ground has been tilled long enough. What once required striving now responds to presence. And that presence is something you earned through endurance. This is also where discernment becomes non-negotiable. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every open door is assigned. And you can feel the difference now. Your body reacts. Your spirit tightens or relaxes. You've learned to trust that internal signal because it's been tested. That discernment will protect what's coming to you. Chosen one. Money is not the center of this transfer. Stewardship is. God is not just increasing your resources. He's increasing your capacity, your patience, your ability to manage without anxiety, your ability to hold abundance without letting it define you. That's why this process took time. Quick gain would have exposed old wounds. Slow alignment healed them. You may notice that your desires have shifted. You're less interested in impressing people, less motivated by comparison, more focused on stability, impact, and freedom. That's not settling. That's clarity. You're choosing sustainability over spectacle, and heaven responds to that choice. I've watched people lose everything because they received more than they were ready to carry. I've also watched people grow steadily, quietly into positions that lasted. The difference was never talent. It was character. It was timing. It was willingness to wait when waiting felt uncomfortable. Chosen one. You are not behind. You are not missing out. What's meant for you has not passed you by. In fact, much of what you avoided would have cost you more than it gave you. The delays you questioned were protections you didn't see at the time. Now, with clearer eyes, you can appreciate the restraint that saved you. This season is also about learning to trust your own voice again. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of urgency, but the voice that speaks calmly, clearly, without pressure. That voice has been trained. It knows when to move and when to wait. And as you honor it, things align faster. You're stepping into a phase where your needs are met without constant explanation, where support shows up without you chasing it, where resources flow through channels you didn't design. That doesn't make you lucky. It makes you positioned. Chosen ones stay humble in this. Gratitude keeps the flow open. Stay grounded. Remember where you came from, but don't live there. You survived that season for a reason, not to revisit it, but to carry its wisdom forward. What's unfolding now will not announce itself loudly. It will integrate smoothly into your life. It will feel natural, not overwhelming. And one day you'll look back and realize the shift happened long before the results showed up. That's how divine order works. Remain steady. Remain surrendered. What you're walking into is built to last. Chosen one. There is a moment when fear stops negotiating and simply steps aside. That moment doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, when you realize you no longer need to rush to secure what God has already assigned. You are entering that moment now. The urgency that once pushed you is fading, not because the promise disappeared, but because trust has taken its place. This season is teaching you how to move without desperation. You're learning that speed is not power, alignment is. There were times when you felt behind, watching others move faster, louder, seemingly ahead. But what you couldn't see then is that many of those paths required maintenance you were never meant to carry. Heaven slowed you down on purpose. I've been there, watching opportunities pass, wondering if I missed something, questioning timing, questioning myself. But looking back, I can see how much damage was avoided, how many compromises were bypassed, how many attachments were cut before they could cost me more than I was willing to admit. Delay wasn't denial. It was mercy disguised as patience. Chosen one. This is where spiritual authority begins to show up in practical ways. You don't panic when plans shift. You don't collapse when something doesn't work out immediately. You adjust, you pivot, you wait. And that flexibility is not weakness. It's strength refined through experience. Heaven trusts you now because you've learned how to hold uncertainty without losing your center. That matters more than talent, more than ambition, more than drive. Many people can chase success. Few can sustain peace while success is being formed. You're learning how to do both. You may notice that fear no longer speaks as loudly as it used to. It still tries, but its voice lacks authority now. You've survived too much to be easily shaken. You've seen what happens when things fall apart and you're still standing. That memory has become a foundation. And from that foundation, confidence grows naturally. Chosen one, divine provision responds to stability. When your spirit is grounded, resources flow more cleanly. Not always faster, but more reliably. You are becoming someone who can manage increase without burning out, without sabotaging yourself, without returning to old survival patterns. That's why this process had to be slow. Rushed growth collapses under pressure. Rooted growth lasts. I remember the first time I felt this internal shift. Problems didn't disappear, but they stopped controlling me. Decisions felt clearer. I didn't need to talk them through with 10 people. I didn't need external validation. I trusted what I sensed, and that trust created space for solutions I couldn't have forced. Chosen one. The calm you carry now is not passivity, it's readiness. You are no longer easily impressed by surface-level promises. You're not distracted by quick wins that cost long-term peace. You've learned to recognize substance, and that discernment is what qualifies you for stewardship. This is also where gratitude becomes powerful. Not performative gratitude, real gratitude. The kind that remembers nights you didn't know how you'd make it through. The kind that acknowledges growth without pretending the process was easy. Gratitude grounds you. It keeps pride from creeping in. It keeps fear from taking over. You are learning how to hold space for both faith and realism. You don't deny challenges. You just don't worship them anymore. You don't pretend everything is perfect. You trust that everything is purposeful. That balance is rare. And it's valuable. This is the stage where your inner world stabilizes enough for your outer world to expand. You're no longer reacting to life. You're responding to it. That difference may seem subtle, but it changes everything. Reactions drain energy. Responses preserve it. You're not waiting for permission anymore. You're not asking whether you're allowed to move forward. You're simply listening for instruction and acting when clarity comes. And clarity is coming more often now, isn't it? Not in dramatic visions, in quiet knowing, in steady conviction. Remain steady here. Don't rush what's forming. Don't doubt what's stabilizing. You are not stuck. You are settling into alignment. And from alignment, everything else flows naturally. Chosen one. There is a moment when you realize you are no longer trying to survive your life. You are stewarding it. That realization changes how you speak, how you decide, how you wait. You don't move from panic anymore. You move from clarity. And clarity carries a quiet authority that chaos can't counterfeit. This is why people sense something different about you now. You're not louder. You're not proving anything. You're simply grounded. You know what you can carry and what you refuse to carry anymore. That discernment didn't come from comfort. It came from seasons where you carried too much and learned the cost. I've learned this the hard way. There was a time when I said yes out of fear. Yes to keep peace. Yes to avoid loss. Yes to stay connected. And every unnecessary yes diluted my energy. The turning point came when I realized obedience to God would sometimes look like disappointment to people. That was painful, but it was freeing, and freedom sharpened my focus. Chosen one focus is becoming one of your greatest assets. You don't scatter your energy the way you used to. You don't chase multiple outcomes at once. You choose what aligns and let the rest fall away without resentment. That kind of restraint is rare, and heaven responds to it. You may notice that your intuition is clearer now, not louder, clearer. You don't need dramatic signs. You sense peace or resistance almost immediately. That's not superstition. That's discernment, refined through obedience. You've learned how to listen before you leap. And because of that, fewer mistakes are costing you time. This is also why certain doors no longer tempt you. You can feel when something would require you to compromise your values or drain your peace. Even if it looks profitable on the surface, something in you says no, and honoring that no is protecting what's coming. Chosen. One stewardship is not just about money. It's about time, energy, attention, emotional investment. God is teaching you how to manage all of it, because when increase comes, it amplifies whatever foundation is already there. If the foundation is unstable, the increase becomes a burden. If the foundation is solid, the increase becomes support. You are building something sustainable now. Not flashy, not rushed. Sustainable. That's why your growth feels quieter. It's rooted. It's not dependent on applause or constant reassurance. It's built on consistency and trust. I've watched people chase visibility and lose themselves. I've watched people receive more than they could manage and crumble under the weight. What's happening in you now is different. You're being shaped to hold abundance without losing humility, to receive favor without entitlement, to grow without forgetting where you came from. Chosen one, you are also learning how to rest without guilt. Rest used to feel like laziness. Now it feels like wisdom. You understand that exhaustion clouds judgment and clarity requires space. You no longer measure your worth by how busy you are. You measure it by how aligned you feel. That shift alone is preparing you for greater responsibility. Leaders who never rest burn out. Stewards who never pause make costly mistakes. You are learning how to pace yourself, and that pacing will preserve you long after others have collapsed. You may still have moments of doubt. That's human. But doubt no longer controls your direction. It passes through without setting up camp. You acknowledge it, and then you return to what you know, what you've survived, what you've learned. That's maturity. Chosen one. Your voice is also changing, not just what you say, but how you say it. There's less urgency, less explanation, more intention. You speak when it matters. You stay quiet when it doesn't. That economy of words carries weight. People feel that. They may not understand it, but they feel it. And that's why respect is shifting in your favor, even from places that once dismissed you. You didn't demand it, you embodied it. This is the stage where alignment becomes visible, not through announcements, but through results. Quiet results. Consistent results. Doors opening without force. Needs being met without drama. Support showing up without you begging for it. Stay here. Stay honest. Stay obedient. You are not becoming someone else. You are becoming more yourself. And that is the version of you that can be trusted with what's next. Chosen one. This is the point where the story fully turns, not outwardly, but inwardly. You are no longer becoming. You are arriving. What once felt like preparation now feels like stability, and what once felt like survival now feels like stewardship. This is not an ending, it is a settlement, a quiet agreement between you and heaven that you are ready to carry what is being released. There is a reason the noise around you has faded. God often removes excess sound before he releases clarity. When distractions fall away, instruction becomes unmistakable. You no longer need to ask 10 voices for advice. You no longer need constant reassurance. You have learned how to listen, and that skill is rare. That skill is valuable. That skill is what protects increase. Chosen one. What is unfolding now is not luck, and it is not coincidence. It is alignment paying dividends. Every boundary you honored, every temptation you walked away from, every moment you chose, integrity over urgency has been stored like seed in the ground. And now in this season, the ground is responding. I want you to recognize something important. The transfer you are stepping into is not only financial, it is energetic, it is emotional, it is structural. God is shifting how resources, opportunities, and influence move toward you, and they move differently now because you move differently. You are no longer reaching from lack. You are receiving from readiness. I remember the moment I realized my life no longer revolved around proving myself. That moment changed everything. My decisions slowed down, my reactions softened, my discernment sharpened. And strangely enough, doors began opening without effort. That is when I learned that humility attracts favor faster than ambition ever could. Chosen one. You are standing in a season where what you touch carries weight. Conversations matter more, decisions ripple further. That is why heaven trained you in silence. That is why you learned restraint. Power without restraint destroys, but power with discipline builds legacies. You may notice that what excites you now is different. You are less interested in attention and more interested in impact. Less focused on image and more focused on stability. That is not loss of passion, that is refinement of purpose. You are being trusted with substance, not spectacle. This is also why certain relationships could not follow you here, not because they were evil, but because they were incompatible with the weight you now carry. God did not remove them to punish you. He removed them to protect you. Every absence made room for something cleaner, something truer, something aligned, chosen. One abundance responds to order. Chaos repels it. And your inner world has been reordered. You are no longer driven by fear of missing out. You are no longer reactive to pressure. You move with intention. That intention creates a pathway for provision that does not exhaust you. There will be moments when you look back and realize how close you were to settling, how close you were to choosing comfort over calling. And instead of regret, you will feel gratitude. Gratitude that you waited, gratitude that you listened, gratitude that you trusted God when nothing made sense. What is coming will not require you to betray yourself. It will not demand you abandon your values. It will not ask you to perform. It will meet you where you are, because who you are now is who it was prepared for. Chosen one. This is the kind of breakthrough that feels normal once it arrives. That's how you know it's divine. It integrates into your life instead of disrupting it. It supports your peace instead of threatening it. It strengthens your foundation instead of shaking it. Remain grounded, remain grateful, remain obedient. The season ahead is not about proving, it is about building, and what you build now will outlast applause, trends, and opinions. You are no longer walking toward the promise, you are walking within it. Chosen one, understand this as well. The people who once doubted you will not suddenly understand you, and they do not need to. Clarity is not a group project. Revelation is personal. God does not explain himself to everyone in your life, only to you. And that is enough. There may still be days when old memories surface, when you remember who you used to be and what you survived. Do not interpret those memories as weakness. They are reminders of distance traveled. They are proof that you did not arrive here accidentally. Every scar taught you discernment. Every disappointment trained you to listen deeper. You are not stepping into a fragile blessing. You are stepping into something fortified, something that can withstand pressure, something that will not collapse at the first sign of resistance. That is why this process required patience. Fragile things rush, lasting things mature. Chosen one, you are allowed to enjoy this season. Enjoy the calm. Enjoy the steadiness. Enjoy the feeling of not being constantly on edge. Joy is not a distraction from purpose. It is fuel for it. God is not offended by your peace. He designed it. As you move forward, continue choosing alignment over approval. Continue choosing obedience over impulse. Continue choosing depth over noise. These choices will keep you anchored no matter how high you rise. The work ahead of you is meaningful, but it does not need to be heavy. You have learned how to carry responsibility without carrying fear. That alone sets you apart. This is the moment to stand fully present, fully aware, fully surrendered. You are ready. Heaven knows it. And deep down, so do you. Trust the timing. Remain faithful always. Chosen one. As we come to the close of this sacred unfolding, receive this moment with reverence. What you have heard was not information, it was confirmation. Heaven has already set things in motion, and you are standing in your exact Kairos moment, your divinely appointed time. What could not be traced, copied, or contained has now been activated by alignment. The transfer is not coming someday. It has already begun. Anointed one, walk forward without fear. You are not late. You are not behind. You are precisely where grace meets readiness. The doors opening before you will not require force, explanation, or permission. They will respond to your obedience. What God is releasing into your life will not confuse you, drain you, or steal your peace. It will settle into you like something that always belonged there. Remain faithful in the quiet. Stay aligned with the flow of the anointing. Guard your spirit, honor your discernment, and move with gratitude for what is unfolding even now. The same silence that protected you is now preparing to speak for you. The same stillness that confused others has positioned you for elevation. May wisdom lead your steps, peace anchor your decisions, and provision meet you where obedience has carried you. Let no distraction pull you back into old cycles. You have crossed a threshold. And if this word resonated in your spirit, let it return to heaven as agreement. You may leave a simple sign of alignment below or share this message with another soul who is ready to rise. But above all, carry this truth with you. Chosen one, you have lived the evolution, and you are walking forward into what was always yours.